Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The 1944 publication of Theory of Games and Economic Behavior by John von Neumann and Oskar Morgenstern represents a foundational moment in the intellectual history of the 20th century, an ambitious attempt to reconstruct economic science upon an unshakable axiomatic foundation. The work proposed a new way of thinking about human interaction, portraying economic life as a series of strategic games to be analyzed with mathematical precision. This essay will undertake a direct and systematic evaluation of the book's internal claims, progressing through its major conceptual sections to assess the logic, coherence, and ultimate success of its arguments as they were originally presented. Analysis will focus overwhelmingly on the text itself, examining the frameworks it built and the conclusions it drew from them, thereby creating a detailed portrait of a truly monumental intellectual edifice. Section 1: The axiomatic construction of measurable utility. The treatise commences its substantive argument by addressing a long-standing problem in economic thought, the nature of utility. The authors recognized that a theory of strategic choice requires a quantifiable concept of preference, a way to measure the value individuals place on uncertain outcomes. Their central claim in this preliminary section is that a cardinal utility function, one where the magnitude of differences in value is meaningful, can be rigorously derived from a set of simple, plausible axioms of rational behavior. They conceptualize choice as occurring between lotteries, which are defined as probability distributions over a set of potential prizes or outcomes. The framework posits a series of axioms governing an individual's preferences among these lotteries. These include completeness, asserting that for any two lotteries, an individual can state a preference or indifference. Transitivity requires that if lottery A is preferred to lottery B, and B is preferred to C, then A must be preferred to C. The most powerful and novel axioms are those of continuity and independence. The continuity axiom, sometimes called the Archimedean axiom, states that for any three lotteries where A is preferred to B and B to C, there exists some probability, P, such that the individual is indifferent between receiving lottery B for certain and a compound lottery offering A with probability P and C with probability 1 minus P. The independence axiom asserts that if an individual is indifferent between two outcomes, they remain indifferent when these outcomes are embedded with identical probabilities within more complex lot. The evaluation of this section's claim must acknowledge its profound success. The logical chain from these axioms to the existence of a utility function is demonstrably sound. This function, the von Neumann-Morgenstern utility function, possesses the crucial property of being unique up to a positive linear transformation. This means that if u of x represents a valid utility function for an individual's preferences, then the function a times u of x plus b, where is a positive constant, also represents the same preferences. This property is precisely what is needed for the theory that follows. It allows for the calculation of expected utility, where the value of a lottery is the sum of the utilities of its outcomes weighted by their respective probabilities. The claim that they had grounded the concept of measurable utility in rational choice axioms is largely vindicated. The framework provided a powerful response to the prevailing ordinalist view in economics, which held that utility could only rank outcomes without measuring the intensity of preference. The primary critique, which developed over time, concerns the descriptive accuracy of the axioms themselves. Behavioral studies would later question whether humans consistently adhere to principles like the independence axiom. Within the book's own terms, however, the axiomatic development is a masterpiece of formal reasoning, achieving its stated goal of creating a numerical scale for preference under risk, a necessary precondition for the theory of games to proceed. Section 2: The formal definition of strategic interaction. Having established a basis for individual valuation, the authors proceed to construct the formal apparatus for describing a game. The central objective here is to create a general abstract representation capable of capturing the essence of any situation involving strategic interdependence. The text introduces two primary forms of representation: the extensive form and the normal form. The extensive form is presented as a complete and detailed description of the game as it unfolds over time. It is conceptualized as a game tree, where nodes represent decision points for players and branches represent their available choices. Each path from the root of the tree to a terminal node represents one possible complete playing of the game, with payoffs assigned to each player at every terminal node. This form is meticulous, specifying a sequence of moves, the information available to each player at every decision point, and the role of chance events, represented by moves of a fictional player called nature. The claim is that this extensive form is a universally applicable language for describing the rules of any social interaction. The evaluation of this claim is positive in terms of logical possibility but complex in terms of practical application. The extensive form is indeed sufficiently general to theoretically map any conceivable game. Its very comprehensiveness, however, reveals the immense informational demands of the theory. The model presumes that all players share a common understanding of the entire game tree, a condition known as common knowledge of the rules. The authors then introduce the normal, or strategic, form of the game as a more compact representation derived from the extensive form. A strategy for a player is defined as a complete plan of action, specifying a choice for every possible contingency, or information set, that a player might encounter. The normal form represents the game as a matrix, where each dimension corresponds to a player. The entries along the dimension correspond to their available strategies, and the cells of the matrix contain the payoff vectors for each combination of strategies chosen by the n players. The argument is that for the purposes of rational analysis, the game can be understood as all players simultaneously choosing their complete strategies. This conceptual leap from a dynamic, sequential process to a static, simultaneous choice is a core tenet of the book's methodology. It focuses attention on the logical structure of the conflict, abstracting away from the psychological and temporal details of play. The internal claim that the normal form contains all strategically relevant information is valid, given the definition of a strategy. It successfully transforms the baroque complexity of the game tree into a manageable, albeit often vast, mathematical object suitable for analysis. Section 3. The Minimax theorem and the resolution of two-person conflict. The intellectual centerpiece of the entire work, and its most celebrated achievement, is the analysis of two-person, zero-sum games. In this type of game, the interests of the two players are in direct opposition. What one player wins, the other player loses. The sum of their payoffs is always zero, or more generally, a constant. The book's profound claim in this section is that every finite, two-person, zero-sum game has a definitive rational solution. This solution is characterized by the Minimax theorem, first proven by von Neumann in 1928 but presented here in its full context. The theorem asserts that there exists a value for the game and a pair of optimal strategies, one for each player. An optimal strategy is one that guarantees a player a certain payoff, known as the value of the game, regardless of what their opponent does. Specifically, it allows a player to maximize their minimum possible payoff, the maximin, while the other player seeks to minimize the maximum possible payoff they might have to concede, the minimax. The theorem's non-trivial claim is that these two quantities, the maximin and minimax, always evaluating this claim requires acknowledging its mathematical elegance and its complete success within the specified domain. The proof of the Minimax theorem is a landmark result. It establishes that for this class of games, a stable equilibrium in strategies exists. The solution may require the use of mixed strategies, where a player chooses their course of action randomly according to a specific probability distribution. The concept of a mixed strategy was a crucial innovation, demonstrating that in a strategic world, the optimal course of action can be deliberately unpredictable. The book's exposition of this theorem provides a complete theory of rationality for situations of pure conflict. The recommendations it provides a prescriptive and robust player following their minimax strategy has a guarantee on their outcome, and they cannot be exploited by a clever opponent. The analysis is internally flawless. For the world of two-person, zero-sum interactions, von Neumann and Morgenstern delivered on their promise of a complete, rational solution. The historical irony, of course, is that while this part of the theory is the most perfect, the class of games it describes represents a very small and special fraction of economic and social life which is seldom characterized by pure conflict. Section 4. The cooperative framework for n-person games. Moving beyond two-person conflicts, the authors confront the much more complex world of games with 3 or more players. This is where the book's character shifts dramatically, from the analysis of individual optimal strategies to the logic of coalitions and group formation. The central claim of this section is that a rational solution for n-person games can be conceptualized not as a single outcome, but as a set of stable outcomes, referred to as a standard of behavior. The primary analytical tool introduced for this purpose is the characteristic function. This function, denoted as V of S, assigns a numerical value to every possible subset, or coalition S, of the n players. This value represents the total joint payoff that the members of coalition S can guarantee for themselves by coordinating their strategies, regardless of the actions of the players outside the coalition. This function abstracts the game away from individual strategies and focuses entirely on the power of groups. The authors then define an imputation, which is a distribution of the total payoff among all n players. That is both individually rational, each player gets at least what they could get on their own, and group rational. The total payoff is fully distributed. The core of their proposed solution is the von Neumann-Morgenstern stable set. A stable set is a collection of imputations that satisfies 2 conditions: internal stability and external stability. Internal stability requires that no imputation within the set can be dominated by another imputation in the same set. Domination occurs if some coalition has both the power and the incentive to break away from one imputation to enforce another. That gives every member of the coalition a better payoff. External stability requires that any conceivable imputation outside the stable set must be dominated by at least one imputation inside the set. The claim is that these stable sets represent the possible social equilibria or accepted standards of behavior for a given society or game. A stable set embodies a convention where any outcome within the convention is immune to overthrow by another outcome within the same convention, while any outcome outside the convention is vulnerable to being overthrown by one within. The evaluation of this ambitious claim is decidedly mixed. The framework itself, particularly the characteristic function, was a brilliant innovation that founded the field of cooperative game theory. It provided a language to talk about coalitional power. The solution concept of the stable set, however, proved to be fraught with difficulties. The authors themselves were aware of some of these. A single game can possess many different stable sets, sometimes an infinite number of them. Its multiplicity means the theory can identify many potential social norms but fails to predict which one will emerge. Furthermore, some games were later shown to possess no stable sets at all, a troubling discovery for a general solution concept. The conditions for an outcome to be in a stable set are also quite complex, making the concept difficult to apply and its predictions hard to test. The stable set, while intellectually fascinating, lacks the definitive, prescriptive power of the minimax solution for two-person games. It provides a sophisticated description of social stability, but offers little predictive traction on the specific distribution of rewards that will materialize in an n-person interaction. It is a theory of possible social orders, a significant accomplishment, but a less certain theory of outcomes. Section 5. Economic markets as cooperative games. In the final major part of their work, von Neumann and Morgenstern apply the n-person cooperative game framework to specific economic problems, most notably market exchange. Their goal is to model economic activity, such as trade between a few sellers and many buyers, as a formal game and to analyze the resulting coalitional possibilities. They analyze a simple market with one seller and two buyers, demonstrating how the buyers might form a coalition against the seller or how the seller might pay them off against each other. The analysis extends to more complex markets, aiming to derive classic economic results, like the competitive equilibrium, from the principles of game theory. The central claim is that this gamma-theoretic approach provides a more fundamental understanding of market structure and price formation than classical economic models, which often treat agents as passive price takers. In their model, agents are active strategic players who form coalitions to secure advantageous terms of trade. The evaluation of this application reveals both the strengths and the significant limitations of their cooperative framework when applied to the economy. The strength of the analysis lies in its explicit focus on bargaining power and the formation of interest groups, such as cartels or consumer unions. It provides a formal basis for understanding why, in markets with small numbers of participants, the final allocation of resources depends heavily on who can effectively collude with whom. The models successfully illustrate how different market structures can emerge from the same underlying set of agents and preferences, depending on the rules of the game governing coalition formation. However, a major critical point regarding the internal logic of the application concerns the book's pervasive use of the constant sum assumption to fit economic exchange into the framework developed for zero-sum games. The authors typically model it as a situation where money is exchanged for a good, and the utility of money is treated as linear and transferable. This effectively makes the game a constant sum affair, where the goal is to divide a fixed amount of total utility among the participants. This construction is a powerful simplification, but it glosses over the fundamental economic reality of value creation. Most economic interactions are variables, and trade, production, and innovation create new wealth and utility, expanding the pie rather than merely dividing it. By largely confining their analysis to the division of a fixed surplus, the author's economic models capture the dynamics of pure bargaining and conflict but have less to say about growth, production, and the positivism nature of a thriving economy. The application demonstrates the power of the coalitional lens while simultaneously highlighting the constraints imposed by the mathematical structures they had so elegantly developed for games of pure opposition. Conclusion in summary: a direct evaluation of the claims made within theory of games and economic behavior reveals a work of dual character. In its initial sections, the book is a monument of successful logical construction. The axiomatic derivation of cardinal utility provided a robust foundation for decision theory, and the formalization of games in extensive and normal form created the very language of modern strategic analysis. The minimax theorem for two-person zero-sum game stands as an unqualified intellectual triumph, a complete and definitive solution to the problem it addresses. The work delivered precisely what it promised for this domain. As the book ventures into the more complex and socially rich territory of n-person cooperative games, its claims become more aspirational and its solutions less determinate. The framework of characteristic functions and imputations provided powerful new tools for political and social theory, but the proposed solution concept, the stable set, while intellectually profound, proved to be a far less conclusive guide to outcomes than its two-person counterpart. Its multiplicity and potential non-existence limited its predictive power. Consequently, the application of this framework to economic markets yielded important insights into bargaining and coalitions, but was constrained by a constant sum view that fits awkwardly with the valuer-creating nature of most economic activity. The enduring significance of von Neumann and Morgenstern's work, therefore, lies less in providing a complete and final theory of all economic behavior and more in its revolutionary success in demonstrating that social and economic interaction, in all its complexity, could be a subject for rigorous, formal, and mathematical inquiry. It posed the questions and built the foundational language that would preoccupy generations of scholars to come.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.